Hello everyone, Andrew here, and today I thought it would be fun to look at some of the big box games in my collection, because last week we looked at EarthBound, and I got into a whole discussion in the comments about other games that came in either big or special edition boxes. One example that I'm going to talk about here first is Gyromite, and just to show you what I mean, this is the size of your typical NES game, and this is the size of the big box Gyromite. Now Gyromite, this isn't a special edition. There are some games like EarthBound that only came in the big box, because every single version of it came with the guidebook, and then there's some boxes here that, the game came in its normal form, but then if you pre-ordered it or you bought the special edition, then it would have come with a bigger box. We're going to look at both of those kinds of things, and yeah, they're just so much fun to own. I have a love-hate relationship with them. And in the case of a game like Gyromite, or, one of the other ones you're going to see here, they look awesome on a shelf, but what about when you don't have shelf space? You can't just line them up along with the rest of your games, because now you have this gigantic box to deal with. So, they are awesome, and I just love getting my hands on things like this. And yeah, the first one we're looking at here is Gyromite. We have a whole bunch of stuff. We have NES, I have something I want to talk about from Atari. We're going all the way up to like PS3 and PS2 and Wii. So expect a whole range of different things here, but we're going to start with some of the older stuff. And yes, Gyromite, of course, one of the two games that worked with Rob the Robot. You could either get Gyromite through the deluxe set, which was the NES console package, which included Rob and Gyromite and all the pieces that went with it, or you could buy Rob separately, but then you would of course have to buy Gyromite separately as well. And then that meant you had to get a gigantic box like this, because there's tons of different pieces in here. I'm not going to be able to open all of these boxes, because I'm already going to try to get through this video as fast as I can, and even if I don't open them, it's probably still going to be a 20 to 30 minute video. Someday I hope to do a Rob video where I will unbox this, and show other Rob stuff as well. But it includes the gyros themselves, the buttons that the gyros press down on, the holder for the controller, the motor which spins the gyros, so there's tons of stuff in this box. And you wonder why there was never more Rob games. I can't imagine that they sold super well, and it must have been a pain to have to, make all of these pieces. Like, your game production value is just going way up, because every single game needs to have all these pieces that go with it. So that's Gyromite, and it's definitely not easy to find the big box Gyromite or the stack-up. I haven't gotten lucky enough to find the stack-up yet. I did break down and buy a cartridge version of stack-up, which I put off for many years, because the Rob games are pretty much useless if you don't have the pieces to, use with Rob to work with the game. So it kind of sucks just having the stack-up cartridge, but just like EarthBound, after so long, all the times I've gone to thrift stores, and even video game stores, the swap meets I've gone to, I've never actually seen stack-up in the box, or even just the pieces for it. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that someday. But at least I have Gyromite, because that's a really cool box to have. This is Mario 3, which I was just using to compare the Gyromite. But then, actually, I'll keep it in here for a second, because another good comparison to make is that there is this game right here, Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego. Now, some, big box games like Gyromite are bigger than the original game boxes in every way. But then you have boxes like Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego, where from the front, it's actually the exact same size, but they had to increase the kind of depth of it, because Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego, it probably won't focus, includes, as it says right over there, the New American Desk Encyclopedia, right? Yeah, the New American Desk Encyclopedia. I actually got it right. And when you open it up here, you see you have your game, you have your instruction manuals and everything. Yeah, 2 instruction manual. Actually, no, this isn't another instruction manual. This is a poster that folds out and shows all the cool Konami games from back then. We have a postcard where you send in and get a thing. And then underneath all that, you have this gigantic encyclopedia. That takes up like the entire box. Now, for the longest time I was looking for this thing. So if you're looking for this because you have a box and not the encyclopedia, this is what the end of it looks like. So if you're ever at your Value Village or Goodwill or whatever, and you see just a blank blue bookend that says Desk Encyclopedia at the top, know that that goes with Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego. Then you have the back and the front. And of course, Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego, it goes through. You're traveling through time, trying to solve all these mysteries. And you would sometimes need to turn to the Desk Encyclopedia to help you out. Now, this thing is like a billion jillion pages. We're at like 1,400 pages. It's ridiculous. I haven't really played the game too much in depth, so I can't tell you too much about how it incorporates into the game. Maybe someday I'll just have to sit down and put like a year aside and say I'm going to beat Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego. But yeah, the game actually included this encyclopedia, and for that reason it had to have this gigantic box where the top comes off. So I've always thought that was really cool, because not many NES games had bigger boxes. I mean, there was Gyromite and Stack Up because they needed all those pieces, but then in the case of Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego, for it to include that encyclopedia, I've always thought that was pretty cool. So let's put that to the side. We can now put... Wow, I'm a dork. I didn't even put Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego back in the box. Let's slide that back here. Just for now, and I'll put Mario 3 off to the side. Okay, what game should we move on to next? So let's talk about Super Nintendo. I showed EarthBound, of course, in the last video where I unboxed it, so I'm not going to get it out again. I didn't want to put it on the couch here and, risk having my tower of stuff here collapse on it. But another big box Super Nintendo game is, of course, Mario Paint. It included the Super Nintendo mouse, although it also has a plastic mouse pad, which is almost the size of the box. So that's another reason why the box is so big. It's not just the mouse that takes up all this space. And yeah, Mario Paint probably doesn't need too much of an introduction. There was very few games in North America that actually used the mouse. In fact, was it the only one? I'm trying to think of another North American one that actually did. Although it's just slipping my mind right now. I think there was a few that might have been compatible with it, but I don't know if there was any that 100% needed it. There is Mario vs. Wario, though, in Japan, and I do have the card of it. I've been meaning to do a random game of it for, years now. So let's keep that in my mind, and I'll hopefully be able to do that soon. But yeah, that uses the Nintendo mouse, and yeah, this is another big box Super Nintendo game. Along with EarthBound, like I said, there was also Lethal Enforcers, which came with a gun. Not the Super Scope, but a different gun made by Konami. And we'll actually talk about a little bit about Lethal Enforcers in a bit. Although the last thing I want to talk about regarding Super Nintendo is the Super Game Boy. Now, you might be saying, this is a normal-sized Super Nintendo box. I've been lied to in the title. What happened was, in the comments of the EarthBound video, someone said that the Super Game Boy had a big-sized box. And I thought that was kind of weird, because this is my Super Game Boy box, and it is actually exactly the same size as a typical Super NES cart box. And what happens is, I did some research, and there was actually another version of that box, which included a big Super Game Boy book or magazine, exactly the same like the Player's Guide in EarthBound, that told you all about the different games that had special features when you used them with the Super Game Boy. So that's really cool. I'm actually going to keep an eye out for that now, but yeah, I don't have that. I don't have that version of the box. I actually have the smaller one, which is interesting that eventually they downsized it. I had no idea that the bigger one even existed. Okay, let's move on to some N64. Now, N64 had quite a few big box games. Not big box like EarthBound or Mario Paint, but in the case where they did have a bit more depth, is they included accessories, such as in the case of Hey You Pikachu, where it included the microphone. And we also have Pokemon Stadium, always seems to be the Pokemon games, which included the Transfer Pack, which allowed you to hook up your Game Boy Pokemon games to your 64. And then, the last one I have here is Star Fox 64, which included the Rumble Pack. So those are three pretty cool examples of big box games. Not gigantic like Gyromite, but still, even just when you're looking through your, I have my box games lined up on the shelf, it's still neat to be able to, to see those bigger games mixed in with all the smaller ones. It's always really cool. What do we want to move on to next? Let's move on to some Sega. Like I said, right beside me here. Well, this one I want to show, which is upside down, is Lethal Enforcers for the Sega CD. I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, Lethal Enforcers was on the Super Nintendo, so why couldn't it just be on the Genesis? Why did they have to put it on the Sega CD? It's kind of it's a shooter. I know they tried to do that with a lot of Sega CD games, where they did their full motion video thing and incorporated it into a shooting game. But yeah, the reason this box is so big is because it includes the Justifier gun, which is the actual size of the gun that you see here on the box. So that kind of explains why the box had to be so big. Plus, anyone who knows old Sega CD or Saturn games will know that their cases were gigantic. There's these gigantic rectangular jewel cases that always snapped and broke, so I mean, you probably need a whole box alone just to hold that. Now, those cases sucked. Whoever's design idea that was, I don't know what the heck they were thinking. Then you have the jewel cases we have now. Even early original Sony 1 games used those oversized jewel cases, which was really silly. But anyway, before we rant about that all day, next up we have Virtua Cop, which had to be gigantic because it included the orange gun here, so it felt like you were playing it in the arcade, which, I mean, that's what it should feel like, right? When you're playing a game that's based on an arcade game, you want it to be as much like the arcade game as possible, so that's a cool thing right there. What else do we want to move on to? I have this whole tower of stuff here, although I have a few more things on the couch. What should I do? Let's start with the tower before it does fall and crush me. This is, a more recent game, not too recent, but more recent, is, of course, Pokemon Heartgold. Heartgold's mine, my sister has silver, Soul Silver, and yeah, it had to be bigger because it included the Pokewalker. which I never once used or even took out of the box, but you could apparently walk around and, you know, I think level up your Pokemon by putting them in it, and then they'd get experience as you walked. I don't know. Tell me if you used it. I used to see people at conventions all the time with them on their bags and things like that. Sometimes clipped to their hats. But yeah, I don't see them too much anymore. It's something that I don't even think it was ever compatible with the Pokemon game after. Because yeah, Heartgold and Soul Silver came out, and then I think White and Black, and then White and Black 2 came out after that, and I don't think it was compatible with that, or was it? Tell me, because I do not remember. But yeah, that's just an example of a bigger box on the DS, and when I pre-ordered it, I also got this with it. I mean, I guess it's not actually part of the box, but it was with the game, so I thought I would throw that into the video as well. Well, speaking of which, I do need to go and pre-order Alpha Sapphire, because I'm sure everyone's out there probably pre-ordering it already. Even though there's still like a billion months before it comes out. Next up, we have, for the Game Boy Advance, WarioWare Twisted, which had to have a bigger box because the cartridge was a weird size. It was like your normal cartridge, then it stuck out at the front because it had a gyro sensor in it. Because of course, you know, the whole point of WarioWare Twisted is that you have to turn your Game Boy Advance for most of the games. The weird thing is though is that there was also Yoshi Topsy Turvy, another Game Boy Advance game, which had a gyro sensor built in, but that cartridge was actually a lot thinner, so I'm not sure what the difference between that game and this game is as far as how it was made and why this one had to be bigger and have a bigger box. But still, WarioWare, fun games, and it has a bigger box too. You can see the thing on the front there turning back and forth. It's crazy. Absolutely bizarre. What do I want to move on to next? Next up, let's talk, guys. I guess we've done Game Boy Advance, DS. Let's do some more DS with Gyakuten Saiban 4, also known as Apollo Justice Ace Attorney in North America. This is the big special edition box, which is actually still sealed, which came, I mean, you'd probably think it was like a DS or a special edition DS was in here or something. But what actually happens is it came with two games. It came with Apollo Justice, and it also came with a special edition game that you could only get in this pack called the Ace Attorney Encyclopedia. You can kind of see on the bottom here, they talk about it. And what that does is it has all of the information from the first three Ace Attorney games on it. So you can just pop that in and it's what it says. It's an encyclopedia. So you can listen to all the music from all three games. You can read the profiles of every character that appears in all three games. You can read the description of every piece of evidence that appears in all three games. So it's actually a really, really, really neat thing. Of course, it's all in Japanese because it was only released in Japan. Which is a shame. That would be a really cool thing to have in North America as well. But yeah, that you could only get that in the special edition. So that's why it's so big, because you have two full-size cartridge cases, you know, beside each other there. And it also comes with a special edition DVD too, which talks about the games, all the Ace Attorney games that were released up to this point. But otherwise, it's just a really nice box to have on the shelf. You can see it kind of glittering there. Glittering, is that even a word? Sparkling, bedazzling, whatever it's called. I don't know these crazy things. Okay, what do we want to move on to next? I still have the tower. Well, what time are we at here? Let's talk a little bit about Atari. Atari 2600 had a few games which had bigger boxes, and in this case, this is definitely one of the more common ones, although I love this because I have like a mint copy of it, is Star Raiders, and this included the number pad, which you know, you had your typical Atari controller, only had the joystick and one button. Well, this thing had like 12 buttons on it. So you could input different commands, and it also even came with a comic book, which is actually in here. Everything in here is like perfect shape. New inside, Volume 3 of the Atari First Edition action-packed comic book by DC. I wonder how much that goes for these days. Seems like everything by DC that's old is worth billions of dollars. Not that I would sell it anyway. But yes, here's a funny thing to talk about. These actually aren't, you know, big boxes. Like, I mean, this one right here, people might not know what an Atari box looks like. This looks like a typical Atari 2600 box, except it does that thing where it has more depth because it had to fit the keypad in it. But for Atari 400 and 800, I don't know what they were thinking, but this is a typical game box for the Atari 400 and 800. And like, wait, I've been trying to think about what I was going to say when I got to this part of the video, but I think just showing you will make a lot more sense. This isn't like a special edition box, but I just had to get these in here since we're talking about big boxes anyway. Just watch. This is the box. And this is the cartridge. Like, it makes absolutely no sense. It's just, It's like when you open a bag of potato chips, and the bag of potato chips is like this big, and you're like, oh man, I'm gonna get a ton of potato chips. Then you open them up, and there's like 4 potato chips in there. It's like, that's what this box is. It makes absolutely no sense. It's just so stupid, and I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, it's not even the only one. Like, they all did it. Like, you have Defender right here. Like, let's open this one up, and it's like, oh man, there's gonna be a gigantic cartridge inside here, and then it's like, oh, it's Defender. It's just the stupidest thing. I mean, it's not even like the instruction manual's not even that big. Like, look, it takes up that much of the, like, I don't know what they were thinking. I guess they weren't going the TurboGrafx route where they're like, we need to make our console bigger so people think it's better. Obviously, Atari thought, you know, let's make the box gigantic, even though the cartridge is like this big, and people will buy it. I don't know what they were thinking. Like, that's one of the most illogical things I've ever seen in video game history. And it just boggles my mind. I mean, it's not even like the book. There's nothing in here that is that big. It doesn't come with an EarthBound guidebook or anything like that. It's just a cartridge and a book that doesn't even take up half the size. It's ridiculous. So I've been wanting to rant about this box for like 50 years now. So now that we're talking about big special edition boxes, even though this isn't a special edition, and even though every freaking Atari game had a box this big, I needed to point it out. And it's even funny too because, you know, Value Village, they don't know the first thing about video games. So if you look on the back of the box here, it actually has a sticker on it for $14.99 because they have no idea. They say, this is a gigantic video game box. It must be a special edition, or it must be really good, so we have to jack up the price. Well, it sat on the shelf for like 3 months until I finally bugged them enough that they're like, if we sell it to you for like $4, will you stop coming in here? So I said, yes, please, just sell it to me. So that's what ended up happening there. But just the most illogical boxes I have ever seen in my entire life. It's so stupid. Like, I don't understand. Like, you wonder why Atari went broke? All of their money went into producing boxes that were 500 times the size of the cartridges. But before I yell and just, like, destroy, start tearing down the shelves in anger, let us move on to the next thing on our list. And this is really cool. This is Atelier Iris 2 for the PlayStation 2, except it's a Japanese premium edition box, which comes with a really nice music box. So you wind it up, and it's like, you're not going to be able to see it. It's that picture is not actual size. It takes up it's pretty much the size of the box. Then the game just kind of slides down the side. And it's the 2 main characters standing in the middle, and you wind it up, and they spin around, and it plays the music box version of the main theme. This has always been one of my favorite boxes in my collection, just because it's a perfect cube. You don't find many video game boxes that come in perfect cubes. And it has really nice character art on the side. There's nothing on the bottom, but the top has the name, and just the music box is really nice too. Maybe someday I'll just make a video of that, because I've always loved that music box. And I take it out every once in a while, and I play it a bit, and leave it on the shelf, and I'm like, oh no, it's getting dusty, and I quickly put it back in the box. I mean, I love enjoying stuff, but at the same time, I just don't want it to get wrecked. It's such a nice music box. Also speaking of Atelier stuff, we have Atelier Verona on the PS3. Now, the PS3 had a few games, which came in big boxes. Now, like, it's typical for RPGs on even PS2. But also on the PS3, there was 3 NIS America games that came in these completely oversized boxes. There was Atelier Verona, there was Ars Nullico Quoga, and there was Hyperdimension Neptunia. And they came in these really big, like flat, but big boxes. And they would come with the game, a soundtrack CD, and an art book, which would pretty much be the size of the box. Later on, NIS America ended up going the actual game-size box, but with the more depth. So you didn't get these gigantic pancake kind of like boxes. But these were really cool. I have Ars Nullico Quoga sealed, and I don't have Hyperdimension Neptunia, but they're just such neat boxes. And yeah, I didn't bring the other ones here, because I didn't want them to get wrecked. Speaking of Ars Nullico, I have the first and second one with their art books and soundtracks. The first one actually didn't come with the soundtrack, but the second one with the soundtrack and art book in their big special edition boxes too. But they are not here because room was an issue. What else do we want to talk about? Let's talk about Mario Kart Wii. Not much to say about this one. Everyone knows what Mario Kart is. There's been like 3,000 installments of it since this one. But this one came with the Wii wheel, which I used once and then never used again. So that's why it needed a big box. Other Mario stuff is Mario Dance Dance Revolution thing, Mario Mix. Which of course had to come with the pad, So that's why this box is so big. I have a few other versions of Dance Dance Revolution. Like I have the Xbox one in the box and a few other ones, but I didn't think I need to stack them all up here, so I just showed the coolest one, which is of course the Mario one in the box. And let's nicely place that in front of us here. What else have I got in front of me? We have Beatmania. So of course that has to come with the crazy DJ thing, and that is why that is in such a gigantic box. I think I showed that when I picked that up at the swap meet from Jason a few years back. Also in a big box, Super Scope. I know it's kind of like, it's an accessory, but it was the only way to get the Super Scope 6 game, so it depends on how you look at it. Are you looking at it, you're buying the Super Scope and getting the game with it, or are you buying the game and getting the Super Scope with it? Tricky. I mean, actually, you're actually buying the Super Scope and getting a free game, but still, that is a big box for the Super NES. And I need to carefully put this on the floor because even the floor is full now. What else we got? I think that's the final thing I have to talk about. Just like the Atari games, I wanted to bring up one final thing in this video. These are normal size cases. Like, these aren't, bigger cases that I put them in, and these aren't even special editions. But I don't think you can talk about big cases and big boxes without talking about Neogeo briefly. Now, let's put that one off to the side. So there's two kind of realms of Neogeo. You have the AES, which is the home system, and you have the MVS, which is the arcade cabinets. And they each had different cartridges. This video is obviously going on too long. All these big boxes are getting in my head. Yeah, so they each had different cartridge sizes. Now we're going to start with AES. This is the typical case size for an AES game. This isn't like the cases, the shock boxes that you can buy for MVS cards. This is the actual kind of case that AES cards came in, and the cartridges themselves are gigantic. Let me just see here. See, I mean, you have your case here. It's in plastic with the book, so I'll just take that out so you can see it. And yeah, this is the actual size of the cartridge. It has 2 circuit boards on the bottom. I guess we'll compare this to Mario 3. It's actually the size of the Mario 3 box. That's how gigantic Neogeo AES games are. And yeah, they are huge, but they're not as huge as the MVS games. Now right here, I have Puzzle Bobble MVS cart, which goes in the Neogeo, various kinds of Neogeo arcade machine. This shock box is a custom box that you can buy to protect your games, but inside we have the actual cartridge. And the cartridge is even bigger than the AES one, which is hilarious. Not by much, but still, it's a bit different. It's actually just barely bigger. But still, I mean, it's just crazy how big Neogeo games are. So this is a custom box, but usually when, I guess, like an arcade or something ordered a new MVS game, it would come in a blank brown box like this, with just a sticker saying the name on the end. So you open up this, and it would have your marquee inside. It would be bubble wrapped so it didn't get wrecked. And you would find a cart just like this, except this one is the King of Fighters 2003. But yeah, I just needed to point out, Neogeo games are gigantic. That is the thing to take away from this video, if anything. Neogeo games will someday rule the world. But with that said, wow, I think I talked about everything I had surrounding me. About 20 minutes, not too bad. I didn't want this to go on for like 1,000 hours. But please, post down in the comments what big box special edition games you have. Because I love seeing these things. Maybe post them down there. Maybe I'll look it up on Google, or if you have a link to a picture of your, of it in your collection, or if you have a picture of it that you see online, feel free to show me. Because I love learning more about special editions out there. Just like the Super Nintendo, Super Game Boy one. I didn't even know it had a big box. That's great. Tell me what you think about some of these. Yeah, again, tell me which ones you know. There are a few things here I didn't get. Like I have like SingStar collections and stuff on PS2, which came with microphones, and like I said, some Dance Dance Revolution ones I didn't bother getting down. Actually, that's one I should have got right there. Let's get that right now. Right before the video ends. I completely forgot. Aha! Donkey Kong! Jungle Beat in the box includes bongos. I was like, Andrew, before you start recording, don't forget to take that down from up there. That's good because there would have been no room on the couch for it anyway. But of course, this game had to be in the bigger box because it included the bongos. So that is why that's like that. There were also Donkey Konga had a special edition which came with the bongos. We need to end this now, which I actually bought back in the day, but that was back when people threw my boxes out, so I don't have that one anymore. But I do have this. And Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is definitely the best game that utilized the bongos, so I'm definitely happy to have that in my collection. But before I say any more things which make no sense, or more things than more things that make no sense than usual, let us end this video off. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you post some comments of things in your collection down below. And yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and hope to see you next time for something different. So thanks, and see you later.